Hi, my name is Adrienne Mackey, and I am the artistic director of Swim Pony Performing Arts. And this talk is about TrailOff, which is a transmedial walking performance that I've conceived, directed, and am co producing in collaboration with the Pennsylvania Environmental Council. It will likely have its launch delayed from its original date in June, but should be available to the public coming this fall as a free to download mobile app. So, just to give you a little sense of who Swim Pony is and why it is that we're making an app for nature trails throughout the region, Swim Pony's mission is to create unique and deeply investigated live experiences that defy tradition and invite audiences to become curious, critical thinkers in the world. And part of that's meant to me in the last 5 years of the work that we've made is that we really want to lean into big systemic problems and think about how the arts might explode traditional ways of thinking to invite in new audiences. Before I jump into the app itself, I just want to talk briefly about a project that I did back in 2015, which was called Walk Around Philadelphia. And it began as a creative collaboration exploring interdisciplinary artistic process with photographer J.J. Tizu and writer Anne DeForest. And part of that project was spending a week together thinking about how our collective interests might manifest in a unique project that encouraged all of us to think differently about the world around us. And noticing that we collectively had an interest in geography and mapping and civic identity, we decided to undertake a walk around the entire 103-mile perimeter of the border of Philadelphia. And what we discovered in doing that, and the conversations that we shared as we undertook that walk, is that we really found this incredible creative meditation and observational exercise as a deeply profound experience of nature. It really shifted the way that I saw my home city and also shifted the rhythms in which I moved through it. That this very simple, otherwise pedestrian act of walking on foot through space really required me to move at a different tempo and think about the stories that I associated with this place that I thought I knew. Part of the thing that had continued to stick in my mind after that project was the way that we embed stories into place and how I thought that I had one story of Philadelphia in my mind before the walk, and afterwards, being there in a different way with these people really changed the way that I understood what Philadelphia was as a place. And so when I think about nature trails, and in fact, these are some images that I pulled up from a Google image search. Similarly, there's a very specific pattern in terms of the stories we tell. You might notice a pretty monochromatic set of images there. And when I started to think about what TrailOff might be as a project, part of what I wanted to do was think about different kinds of stories than we typically associate with nature spaces, and getting out of that kind of stereotypical idea about who nature is for and how we use it. So TrailOff is a project that is sort of the culmination of that exploration. It's an app that showcases 10 trails throughout the Philadelphia region, each featuring an original drama that unfolds over a roughly 2-mile route that is written by an amazing local author who is both an incredible artist, but also has personal connections to communities that are traditionally underserved by environmental programming. So audiences will experience these journeys, which are surround sound audio, by downloading the app and then going to the spaces. And the GPS triggering embedded in the phone will link the stories that we've recorded from the authors to actual physical spaces along the mapped route of the trail. As the project head, I've really pulled my background in site-specific theater to work with each author to create a unique story that takes place on their trail. And the final experience has both the writer's dialogue underscored with amazing music and atmospheric sound design that all sync to the user, sort of giving them this incredible feeling of being immersed in the place that they're in from the perspective of the author. That it's really the aim of creating kind of a customized live performance for an audience of one that's literally available to them any time of day or night. When users download the app that's currently in progress, they'll be able to explore features of each trail, to learn about the length of the trail, any useful info about sort of how to navigate it. They can also explore aspects of the story, learn about the authors. And then after they finish walking, they also get a new interface that shifts from the sort of basic map where they're walking on the trail listening to the audio, but gives them some informational behind the scenes info, both a behind the scenes podcast between me and the writer, and then also a map that gives them points of historic and environmental interest on the trail. So just to give you a little bit about how this has come together, for the past 2 years, I've been exploring what it means to tell stories in natural spaces. And that's partly an exploration working in this new mixed reality medium. That there's a particular opportunity using stories that are able to take place over time, but give the audience member the opportunity to think about how space is related to the audio that they're hearing. I put together these sort of like discoveries that the creative team and I undertook over like 2 years worth of research into a packet of kind of key lessons, and then gave that to the authors along with some other inspirational sources when they started out on their journey. These are 9 of the incredible writers. You saw Afak Mahmoud's picture up at the beginning there. They're an incredible team that we took a year of outreach to find and select, and the stories that they've created are truly incredible. As I mentioned, we did a little workshopping with them back in March of 2019 to sort of launch them into their trail residency, and also hook them with an environmental organization that could give them information, tips, pointers, history, background, really any insight they needed as they were working out on site. We also concurrently were exploring things through the text side of the piece. We went out to sites and I tried to help identify some key places where narrative might be really interesting and compelling, whether that's because there's unique features in the landscape or because it has a particular local history. And that's part of the work that I did with the authors. We also did a series of audio-based workshops to try to figure out technical tricks and figure out what limitations that format of the authors. And then we did a lot of thinking and processing about how to take those experiments into best practice. And really over the 2 years that we've been working on these stories, we've experimented and learned a lot, and are excited to finally put that into practice for the outside world to see. We did also have a series of technical residencies with our app developer Toaster Lab, just to think about like how do you take the conceptual ideas that we discovered and actually put them into the mechanics of the app's functionality. The person you see there is my graphic designer Maria Chaplin, who has been hard at work sort of developing an aesthetic that mostly incentivizes the person not to look at the screen. We obviously wanted beautiful images, but we also wanted people not to be staring at their phones while they're in the midst of going through the experience, but actually encouraging people to look out into nature. And then sound designer Mike Kiley and I wrapped recording with over 100 different artists over the course of the entire 10-story recording process. So there are an incredible wealth of Philadelphia-based performers that you'll hear in the final stories, in addition to original music from musicians throughout the region, and then Kiley's original music that he composed himself. And over the last few months, we have been taking all of that extensive audio work and actually implementing it into spreadsheets and Google Maps that will be used by the developer to actually put into practice all of the different logic that happens in the app. And it's worth noting it's not possible to give you guys an insight through this particular video, but the eventual stories are recorded in a process that's called binaural audio, in which Mike Kiley, our sound designer, is actually able to give sort of a 360 feel of the space. So for example, if you imagine somebody walking up behind you and whispering in your ear, that same kind of spatial feeling of how sound works around you will also be the way that people experience the stories in the app. And Mike was incredibly exhaustive in walking out to each of the 10 different trails throughout the region that we've selected and capturing original audio to get real life nature sounds as part of the story bed that you'll hear when you go out. The last phase that we're in now is taking all of that incredible creative content and actually embedding it into the mapping tool that our developer has built so that we can then start to go up and test things in real space. And actually this month I should have been out walking with lots of people to get a sense of how the app's working. Obviously, because of the current pandemic crisis, things are a little delayed, but we're really excited this summer to hopefully get back on track and get those testing components done so that we can launch launch the app this fall to the public. I'll really briefly just also give another shout out to a separate project that Swim Pony is doing. We actually also entered this into the digital art gallery as part of the climate sensing online space, and this project is called Waterlogged, and it's a commission by the Alliance for Watershed Education of the Delaware River, and it's a game aimed at bringing new audiences to the 23 environmental sites that are part of the Alliance. And it's an analog card game that uses like senses and memory and really fun kind of improvisation and humor, casting the players as aliens visiting Earth's water sphere. So it's another kind of playful, fun, on the ground way to get new people interested and thinking about the stories around climate and natural space. So if you want to learn more, you can feel free to check out Swim Pony's website, swimpony.org, or you can also email me directly, Adrienne@swimpony, and I'd love to hear from you. If you are an environmental organization that's interested in using artistic methods to get people thinking and experience your spaces in new ways, I'd love to hear from you. So thanks so much for listening, and hope to hear from you.